When stability vanishes overnight December. Summer air in Buenos Aires. Maria is 43, an accountant, organized, careful, responsible. She owns a small apartment in Palermo, a compact Renault sedan bought on credit, a life insurance policy she has funded for over a decade, a vacation cottage near Mendoza purchased in the late 1990s because property always appreciates, a university degree framed on the wall, a home filled with electronics bought in installments. It looks like a stable life. Then, in December 2001, everything fractures. The government freezes bank accounts. Citizens are told they can withdraw only a tiny amount of cash per week. The policy becomes known as the corralito. Within weeks, the peso's one-to-one peg with the US dollar is abandoned. The currency collapses. Savings evaporate. Supermarkets are emptied. 5 presidents rotate through office in less than 2 weeks. Crowds gather outside the presidential palace. Police deploy tear gas. Maria stands in her apartment surrounded by everything she owns. Nothing is broken, nothing is stolen. And yet, piece by piece, it becomes clear. Almost everything she purchased to build security has become economically useless. This is not just Argentina's story. Versions of it unfolded in Weimar Germany, in Greece, in Venezuela, in Lebanon, and in Zimbabwe. Different flags, same pattern. Most people imagine collapse as explosions and chaos. Sometimes it is. More often it's quieter, bureaucratic, administrative. Stores stay open, but prices double weekly. Banks stand, but won't release your money. Homes remain, but no buyers exist. Collapse isn't destruction, it's dislocation. Money stops communicating reality. Prices become noise. Signals fail. The invisible system that coordinates everyday life, wages, credit, value, breaks down. And when those signals break, purchases made under old assumptions become stranded assets. They physically exist, but economically they are dead. The first category that consistently fails is real estate bought at the peak of optimism. In early 1990s, Japan, land prices had inflated to surreal levels. Families took out mortgages that stretched across generations. It was considered prudent, safe, inevitable. Then prices fell and kept falling for decades. Some properties lost the majority of their value and never recovered in real terms. Owners weren't ruined by fire or theft. They were trapped by illiquidity. They owed more than their homes were worth. They couldn't sell. They couldn't move. A house is stable only if a functioning credit system surrounds it. Remove liquidity and it becomes heavy, immovable. The same script unfolded during the 2008 housing crisis in the United States. Millions discovered that home equity disappears when credit evaporates. Foreclosures spread. Neighborhoods hollowed out. The house did not collapse physically. Its financial scaffolding did. In Greece, property prices plunged, but worse than the decline was the freeze. No buyers, no transactions. Meanwhile, taxes rose. Owners paid increasing bills on assets they could not liquidate. Maria's vacation property near Mendoza followed the same arc. Its price dropped sharply. There were no buyers. Yet maintenance costs and taxes remained. What had been marketed as a safe investment became a cash drain. Real estate fails and collapses not because buildings crumble, but because financial architecture collapses around them. Mortgages become unpayable. Credit markets freeze. Governments raise taxes in desperation. Liquidity vanishes at the exact moment you need it. And here is the uncomfortable truth. These purchases were encouraged. They were framed as responsible, sensible, mature, but they were bets. Bets on stable currency, bets on functioning credit markets, bets on policy continuity. When those bets fail, the asset becomes a liability. Maria begins to understand something no one ever explained to her. Stability is conditional. The system works until it doesn't. But what happens next will change everything. The second purchase that often turns useless during collapse is the new car bought on credit. A car feels like freedom, mobility, independence. But a car is not a self-contained machine. It is a node in a vast network. It requires fuel. Fuel requires refineries and logistics. It requires spare parts. Parts require imports in foreign currency. It requires insurance. Insurance requires solvent financial institutions. Remove 2 of those inputs. The car becomes sculpture. In pre-crisis Venezuela, auto sales were strong. Families bought vehicles as inflation hedges. Buy something tangible, they were told. Then fuel shortages spread. Spare parts disappeared as imports dried up. Inflation spiraled. New tires cost more than annual salaries. Cars sat unused in driveways, physically intact, functionally useless. After the fall of the Soviet Union, similar patterns appeared in Cuba. Vehicles dependent on vanished supply chains deteriorated quickly. Without parts, even modest mechanical issues rendered cars immobile. The tragedy hits hardest when the loan remains. Debt survives collapse more stubbornly than utility does. You can't drive the car, but you still owe for it. That gap between obligation and usefulness is where middle-class destruction lives. Then comes the cruelest category, long-term financial promises. life insurance, pensions, retirement accounts. These products are essentially contracts with the future. Give us money today, we will return it later. But later arrives in a different currency. In the early 1920s in Weimar Germany, inflation reduced savings to dust. Insurance companies paid policies exactly as promised, in marks. Those marks bought almost nothing. Pensions were honored in nominal terms but destroyed in real purchasing power. Paper compliance, real ruin. In 2008, Argentina absorbed private pension funds into state control. Official guarantees were issued, yet inflation eroded purchasing power relentlessly. The promise remained, the value shrank. In Lebanon, depositors with dollar accounts discovered they could not withdraw dollars. Access was restricted. Exchange rates were manipulated. Savings were effectively haircut by massive percentages. Buildings remained open. Logos remained on doors. But liquidity was gone. Financial products fail during collapse because they rely on stable institutions and stable currency. Remove either, and the promise empties out. The most responsible savers often lose the most. They trusted longest. And then comes the sacred investment, the university degree. Knowledge always retains value. But a credential's economic value depends on a functioning labor market. After 1991 in Soviet Union, millions of educated professionals found their industries dissolved. Engineers drove taxis. Scientists sold goods in markets. The degree remained valid academically. Economically, it had lost its map. During the debt crisis in Greece, youth unemployment soared. Graduates emigrated in large numbers. Degrees financed by families became tickets out of the country, not into prosperity. A degree is a key. It works only if the lock still exists. Collapse doesn't erase intelligence. It erases alignment between skills and economic demand. Maria's accounting degree still hangs on the wall, but clients have vanished. Companies have folded. She takes lower-paying administrative work. The credential didn't disappear. The market did. Most people never hear the next part, and that's the real danger. The fifth category is broad but revealing. Lifestyle consumption financed by credit, home theater systems, renovations, designer furniture, electronics. In stable economies, consumption signals progress. It feels like forward motion. In unstable economies, consumption becomes weight. During hyperinflation in Zimbabwe, citizens rushed to spend money immediately. Holding currency meant watching it dissolve. People bought goods they barely needed simply to preserve some value. But goods deteriorate. They break. They require maintenance. They don't produce income. And when supply chains collapse, repairs become impossible. Objects don't equal resilience. In post-2019 Lebanon, middle-class families who had embraced consumer credit found themselves with shrinking incomes and fixed debts. The furniture remained. The bills remained. The purchasing power disappeared. Consumer goods depend on a broader ecosystem of stability. Remove that ecosystem and they become artifacts of a vanished era. Now step back. Real estate, automobiles, financial products. Degrees, lifestyle goods, what do they share? They are the 5 pillars of middle-class identity. They are what people are told to acquire in order to be responsible adults. The wealthy often diversify internationally. The poor may operate in informal systems with less exposure, but the middle class is deeply embedded in formal finance. Mortgaged homes, financed vehicles, institutional pensions, credential-dependent careers, credit-fueled lifestyles. Every thread runs through the same system. When that system fails, the threads snap simultaneously. According to long-term financial research, sovereign defaults, banking crises, and currency collapses are not rare anomalies. They recur across centuries. Advanced nations have failed, resource-rich nations have failed, democracies and autocracies alike have faced systemic breaks. Argentina was once among the world's wealthiest nations. Lebanon was nicknamed the Switzerland of the Middle East. Venezuela possessed vast oil reserves. None were immune. This analysis is not a prediction. It is not advice to abandon education or housing. In stable conditions, these decisions often make sense, but clarity matters. Every long-term commitment is a bet on systemic stability. When you sign a 30-year mortgage, you are betting on currency stability, labor continuity, policy consistency, and liquidity. When you finance a car, you bet on supply chains, fuel availability, and steady income. When you fund a pension, you bet on institutional solvency and inflation control. These bets usually hold until they don't. The survivors of past collapses shared certain traits. They preserved liquidity, they avoided concentration in one asset or one currency, they maintained flexibility, they understood that contracts can be rewritten when governments become desperate. Maria, years later, still has her apartment, still has her car, still has her degree, but she sees them differently. They were not guarantees, they were wagers. The system did not betray her intentionally, it simply failed under stress. The question is not whether collapse will happen somewhere again. History answers that. The question is whether patterns will be recognized early, or only after. And this is where the video takes a shocking turn. Because the patterns are never hidden, they are visible in hindsight. the purpose of studying them is not fear. It is awareness. Economic Tales does not predict catastrophe. It examines history so that assumptions become visible before they become personal. If this perspective changed how you see stability, stay with us. Because understanding the past might be the only real asset that never becomes useless.